From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
Hello to all my friends and fans in domestic and international surveillance. I'm here today because I believe that we can make a better world.
Today, a Democracy Now! Exclusive on the growing domestic surveillance state and the government's efforts to spy on journalists, whistleblowers, and activists. We host a round table with 3 targeted Americans. We're joined by former National Security Agency's William Binney. He served for over 30 years at the NSA, now warns its data mining program can create an Orwellian state. We'll also speak with Jacob Appelbaum, former WikiLeaks volunteer, and Laura Poitras, the Oscar-nominated filmmaker. Both have been detained and interrogated scores of times when entering the United States. Their laptops, cameras, and cell phones have been seized. In November, a federal judge ordered Twitter to hand over information about Appelbaum's account. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. 2 Chinese Muslim prisoners have been freed from Guantanamo after close to a decade behind bars without charge. The prisoners were among a group of ethnic Uyghurs ordered immediately released in 2008 after a judge ruled they were not enemy combatants. But they languished in prison because both the Bush and Obama administrations refused to resettle them in the United States, and plans for repatriation in other countries fell through. At least 3 Uyghurs still remain at Guantanamo despite the order for their release. The 2 freed prisoners will be resettled in El Salvador. Their release marks the first prison transfer out of Guantanamo in more than a year. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton has urged the UN Security Council to adopt an arms embargo and tough new sanctions against Syria in order to force President Bashar al-Assad's government to comply with the UN peace plan. Clinton also announced plans to expand U.S. support for opposition groups inside Syria.
Start moving very vigorously in the Security Council for a Chapter 7 sanctions resolution, including travel, financial sanctions, an arms embargo, and the pressure that will give us on the regime to push for compliance with Kofi Annan's 6-point plan.
Clinton made the comments as UN Secretary-General Ban KiMoon accused Assad of failing to honor a peace plan that went into effect a week ago.
Despite assurances from the government, there has been no meaningful progress on the ground. This is unacceptable. I call on the Syrian authorities to recognize the full urgency of the situation and permit UN agencies and international relief organizations to organize a major humanitarian field operation to help those people in need.
A bond hearing will be held this morning in Florida for George Zimmerman, who faces a second-degree murder charge in the February 26 shooting death of 17-year-old Trayvon Martin. Martin's parents are expected to attend the hearing and could come face-to-face for the first time with Zimmerman. The Orlando Sentinel reports many local defense lawyers expect Zimmerman will be granted bond and given the opportunity to await trial outside a jail cell. In related news, Florida Governor Rick Scott has announced the formation of a task force to review the state's Stand Your Ground law. The right-wing American Legislative Exchange Council, known as ALEC, continues to lose corporate members amidst widespread public scrutiny of controversial measures it's helped push through state legislatures nationwide. Yum Brands, the owner of fast food chains KFC, Taco Bell, and Pizza Hut, has become the latest company to withdraw from ALEC. ALEC has come under pressure for backing voter ID laws seen as discriminatory toward people of color, as well as the so-called Stand Your Ground gun laws. There is a new development in the case of the police killing of 68-year-old Kenneth Chamberlain, the former Marine who was killed in his own home in White Plains, New York, after he accidentally triggered his life alert pendant. Attorneys for the Chamberlain family have identified the White Plains police officer who shouted a racial slur at Chamberlain prior to the fatal shooting. Attorneys said the officer, Stephen Hart, is also named in a civil lawsuit alleging police brutality brought by a defendant who said he was slammed down to the ground during an arrest 15 months ago. Federal aviation regulators have acknowledged dozens of universities and law enforcement agencies have been given approval to use drones inside the United States. The list includes the Department of Homeland Security, Customs and Border Protection, various branches of the military, defense contractor Raytheon, drone manufacturer General Atomics, as well as numerous universities. Police departments with drone permits include North Little Rock, Arkansas, Arlington, Texas, Seattle, Washington, Gadsden, Alabama, and Ogden, Utah. The FBI has seized a computer server at a New York facility shared by the Internet organizations Rise Up Networks and May 1st PeopleLink. The server was operated by the European Counter Network and ran a program called Mixmaster, which routes emails through anonymous servers in a network. The server also ran a number of mailing lists and websites for political groups. Jamie McClellan of May 1st said, quote, "The server seizure is not only an attack against us, but an attack against all users of the Internet who depend on anonymous communication." The server was seized as part of an FBI investigation into the bomb threats against the University of Pittsburgh. A new government-backed study has found there's no evidence the death penalty acts as an effective deterrent to violent crimes. In a sweeping review of previous studies, the National Research Council found researchers have failed to draw a link between capital punishment and the prevention of murders. The review found there's insufficient data on how potential murderers may perceive the risk of execution as a likely consequence. Vermont has become the third state to urge Congress to repeal the Supreme Court's controversial Citizens United ruling that affirmed personhood rights for corporations. On Thursday, the Vermont House followed the state Senate in backing anti-Citizens United resolutions passed in over 24 towns statewide last month. Hawaii and New Mexico have approved similar measures. A new study shows 1 in 4 working-age Americans were without health insurance at some point last year. According to the Commonwealth Fund, 26% of adults below the age of 65 lacked insurance during 2011, a percentage equal to around 48 million people. 7 out of 10 who lost insurance reported spending at least a year without coverage because the price of obtaining new insurance was too unaffordable. The European Union has agreed to share the private information of passengers flying from Europe to the United States with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. On Thursday, the European Parliament approved a pact that'll grant U.S. access to passengers' date of birth, credit card information, seat number, and dietary preference prior to departure. European lawmakers had waged a 5-year campaign to scale back the sharing of passenger data with U.S. authorities. Pro-democracy protests continue to flare in Bahrain ahead of this week's Formula One Grand Prix. On Thursday, Bahraini forces fired tear gas and stun grenades at hundreds of protesters in the capital, Manama. Bahraini human rights activist Nabil Rajab criticized the Formula One organizers for hosting their race amidst the ruling Sunni monarchy's crackdown.
We are not against Formula One because we are against Formula One. Every part of our nation likes to enjoy the sport, but we are against awarding dictators. Formula One in Bahrain is being taken as a PR for the ruling elite, the repressive dictators who are ruling the country.
Proponents of the Keystone XL pipeline that would bring crude oil from Alberta's tar sands to the Gulf Coast are picking up increasing Democratic support. This week, the House passed a measure that would expedite the pipeline's approval, with 69 Democrats joining with the Republican majority. The White House has vowed to veto the bill should it reach President Obama. The Obama administration sought to delay a decision on the pipeline until after the 2012 election. The phone hacking scandal that's rocked Rupert Murdoch's media empire is expanding on U.S. soil. Lawyer Mark Lewis, who helped expose the massive scandal in Britain, said he's partnering with U.S. lawyer Norman Siegel, who's been investigating the possible hacking of 9/11 victims' cell phones by the British tabloid News of the World. While Lewis said many complaints against News Corp in the United States stem from the now-defunct tabloid, he also said there have been initial allegations against Fox News and other News Corp holdings. Lewis said he's now representing 4 clients who believe their phones were hacked while visiting the United States.
What they're alleging is that they either left messages or received messages, and that their messages were therefore listened into or investigations were sourced. See, what you have to understand is if one person is speaking to another person, the very fact that they're even speaking to each other is potentially news. If you have somebody who is having an adulterous relationship with another person, the very fact that they're speaking to each other is what you as a journalist, if you're writing about a relationship, is what you need as a primary source or a secondary source. It doesn't really matter what they say.
Today marks the second anniversary of BP's Deepwater Horizon oil rig explosion that killed 11 workers and sent nearly 5 million barrels of oil gushing into the water in the worst maritime oil spill in U.S. history. The impact of the disaster still remains, as scientists say. Shrimp, fish, and crabs in the Gulf of Mexico have been deformed by chemicals released during the spill. One commercial fisher person told Al Jazeera that half of shrimp caught during the last white shrimp season were eyeless. Others reported finding clawless and mutated crabs. A new report released this month found that a toxic blend of crude oil and dispersant called Corexit is not degrading as some had hoped. The report also found the toxins penetrate wet human skin faster than dry skin and can be observed in skin under UV light. Nearly 2 million gallons of Corexit were used to disperse the oil, although it was later revealed the chemical made it more difficult for microbes to naturally digest oil. Oil giant BP recently settled with victims of the spill for an estimated $7.8 billion over medical claims and economic losses in one of the largest class action settlements in history. And Levon Helm has died at the age of 71 after a battle with cancer. He was a drummer and singer in Bob Dylan's backup band, The Band, which later became the legendary musical group known simply as The Band. Levon Helm appeared in the 2009 documentary Back to Woodstock, directed by Julie Cohen.
In 1969, we had just signed a recording agreement with Capitol Records.
Levon Helm, drummer and singer in The Band, was a natural fit for the festival. He and his bandmates were already living in the Catskill Mountains north of New York City, in the little town of Woodstock, New York.
A lot of the people here play music anyway. So, you go into the gas station, the guy that's helping you fill your car up, he may be the best banjo picker around, so people around here have always celebrated music.
And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Juan Gonzalez. Welcome to all of our listeners and viewers around the country and around the world.